No, man, but you got to keep going. What am I going to do, quit? That's not an option. You got to keep on keeping on. Life's a garden, dig it? You make it work for you. You never give up, man. That's my philosophy.
Hey gardeners, hope you're all having a great week today. Last week we were talking about pear blossoms on my pear tree, and this morning we have our pear blossom run locally here in Southern Oregon. Everybody running towards downtown. We just live right outside of the running path here on our main street. All right, everybody. Let's get growing.
All my passionate plant people and garden enthusiasts. It's Saturday. It's time for the Let's Get Growing show here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch. I'm your host today. We've got a great show ahead for you today. I'm really excited about our conversation a little bit later on with our guest, Jason Williams from the Cloud Gardener. Jason recently went on a trip basically around the world to learn a bit more about greening cities and how to make green cities more green, and did a whole thing on it. We're going to talk to him about that. And as well too, we have Audrey from Audrey's Little Farm back on the show. We had Audrey on several weeks back ago to talk about her spring garden summit that she does each year. And so I thought we'd bring her back here to have her on for our Are You Follow Me, to learn a little bit more about her channel and her farm. So we'll have Audrey on here in just a little bit as well too, and talk with her all about that. And again, thank you all for being here with me here today. And if you can, right here at the top of the show, click the like button, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, as well as hit the bell notification to be notified of all of those upcoming videos and live streams, as well as share with all of your friends. Let them know about what we've got growing on here on the Urban Gardener channel and the Let's Get Growing show. So definitely do that. And a big, huge shout out to all of you who are watching with us on our replay right now. Thank you so much for joining with us on your time. It's always great to have you. Jump on down into the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know if you got any ideas for some guests, or just drop in, say hi. I'd love to hear from all of you. So definitely leave some comments there. And if you are here with us live on the show and you have any questions or comments, definitely jump into the chat. Let us know you're here. Let us know what you got growing on. And follow all of our links right down below in the description below. And yeah, definitely do all of that. And again, thank you all so much for being here. We talked about it a little bit last week, and I'm going to talk about it, I suppose, for the rest of the month as well, too, because it is April and it's National Garden Month. So National Garden Month right now. And so we'll be celebrating that throughout the month. And as I talked about last week as well, too, as we were introducing National Gardening Month, was just kind of shooting out some ideas for you. And what you could do is, most of us, here on this channel or who are watching this show are really already gardeners, and we're already celebrating Gardening Month every month when it comes down to it. So maybe some of us gardeners can do something for helping us build the overall gardening community during National Garden Month. And so I was throwing out some suggestions and some ideas, and letting you all actually know too, one of the things I'm going to do too, because it made me think of an idea as I was actually talking about it too. But I think what would be great for all of us gardeners who are already celebrating National Gardening Month is to go invite somebody, maybe a family member, a friend, a neighbor, even better, somebody who doesn't have a garden or anything, and invite them over to your garden. Invite them over and show them what you've got growing on in your garden. Talk, and show them kind of how easy it is. Maybe do a little nudging and convincing them to maybe start one of their own gardens. And one good way to convince someone of getting someone to start their own garden is not only to show them how easy it is and how nice a garden can be, but also to help them get one started as well too. So we could do a little volunteering and mentorship or something like that when it comes to other folks in our lives and people around us in our community. And we could bring them into the gardening community as well too. And when I was talking about this, I was thinking, one of the things I could do as well is, the bringing in the neighbors is a great thing as well too. A lot of my neighbors already know me. I've been here for years, but they already know me and they know my gardens and they know my space and all of that. But there's some new people over the years that have moved in. And I thought, maybe what I could do is go and collect some seed packets of some seeds that I've saved from my own garden and make kind of like a little seed welcome packet kind of thing for them, and go and introduce myself to some of the newer neighbors in the neighborhood and give them some seeds. Maybe even go to some of my neighbors that I already know and give them some seeds as well too. And again, invite people over, maybe check out the garden and be able to talk and tell them about all of the joys of gardening through sharing my gardening experience with them as well too. And that's something we can really do. Community building is huge, and it's also really huge in our own communities as well too, right? Local, at home. So why not do that as well and help build your own local gardening community at the same time? So I think that's a really great idea, a great way to basically celebrate National Gardening Month. And so again, lots and lots growing on here. We got plants just going and growing and starting, and we're seeding lots of things. And like I said, spring is well underway. Our gardens are moving along really, really well. We are just now for a lot of the different things that we've got, we're just kind of, I think, holding on and waiting. I'm starting some other things and trying to time them out just right for our last frost date, which will be coming up here in a few weeks. And then we can really just go ham on the garden and just grow whatever and do whatever at that point in time, So lots growing on as well too. I hope you guys have a lot growing on in your gardens too. Let's jump in here and see who we've got in the conversation right now. Like I said, if you can, definitely jump into our comments here if you haven't already, and say hello to everybody. We definitely want to say hello right at the top here to our good friend and facilitator, Jay Dixon, joining us from Midwestern Ontario, Canada. Make sure you check out all of the links that Jay is dropping into the conversation throughout the show. And yes, definitely thank you, Jay, for all you do in helping us with all of the extra information and links and all of that as well too. So, and also too, I also want to mention if you have a small channel and you have would like a shout out, definitely mention that you have a small channel in our chat there, and Jay will definitely make sure we can drop a link to your channel into the chat there and give you a little chat shout out there as well too. All right. I see Mobius was in a little bit earlier there too. And looks like we got a new viewer, Texas Organic TV. Awesome. First time here. Looking forward. Excellent. It's great to see you. It's great to have you here with us at the Let's Get Growing show. I see David in the conversation as well, too. Great to have you from Bowtie Life in the Garden. Let's kind of see here. See, everybody got the conversation started nice and early today, which is great. Let's see here. We got our good friend Adam joining us from Central Point, Oregon. He says he'll be in and out. He's working his out and burning in his burn pile today. All right, I see there. Excellent, Adam. It's great to have you anytime, anyways, joining us from right down the road here in Southern Oregon. Thank you so much. Jersey Girl, awesome. Great to have you back. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being in the conversation. Let's see here. I see we also got Shawnee Groves saying thumbs up. Yes. Hit those thumbs ups as well, too. Thank you, Shawnee. Thank you for being here. All Right on. Let's see. We got Mill Creek Market joining the conversation as well too. Joining us, all the much love. Yes. Watching discreetly at the farmers market and cold and rainy farmers market as well too. Oh, well, hopefully getting a chance to catch up with our show and our conversation here will help warm you up there in your cold and rainy farmers market. It's a little gray, a little cool out, as everybody saw at the beginning of the show there too. I showed a little clip. I was out earlier because I try to get out early and check out what's going on around in the gardens, plan the day out and what I can do. And I forgot that it was our pear blossom run today. We have like a celebration weekend like a lot of towns do and everything. And one of the things a lot of towns do in some of these celebration weekends is have like a big city run. So they have a big 5K run that they do through the city and everything here. And my place is just kind of right outside the path of it here on the main street. So I was out there checking it out. So I thought I'd film a little clip and show you all the pear blossom run, because last week I was showing you all the pear tree in my container tree that I've got out in the alleyway garden, and all the blossoms were on it. It's looking beautiful right now. So definitely great to see everybody out enjoying the run anyways, even though it's a little cool and gray out. But right on. Let's see. We've got to MLKB saying, I just started hardening my plants. Hope the weather gets better next week. Then transplanting begins. Oh, that's awesome. I still got a couple more weeks to go until I can do my hardening off of all of my plants and all of the things that I've got for my indoor starts that are going to move outdoors. So we will be doing that here really soon as well too. In a few weeks though. I've tested around. I just don't think this year's the year. There's just some weather patterns and things that are happening right now that just kind of make me go, you know what, I'm going to hold off a little bit. I usually like to test it and get out a little early and everything, but just something right now, it's a little cooler. Something just gives me the feeling like there might be, some sort of later frost this year. So I'm definitely going to adhere to my last frost date, maybe, and really keep an eye on that 10-day forecast right around that time as well too. So right on. I see Sam in the conversation. Thank you, Sam, for joining with us here. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. We've got a great show ahead for you. Like I said, we've got Jason Williams from the Cloud Gardener. Again, I'm really excited about this conversation. Catch up with him. I followed along with him on his worldwide trip he did, checking out all of these great cities around the world and exploring how to improve green spaces in cities. And it's just going to be a great conversation. So definitely keep tuned for that. And then here in just a moment, we're going to catch back up with a guest we had on, like I said, just a few weeks ago, Audrey from Audrey's Little Farm. She was on talking about her gardening summit a few weeks ago. Well, we got her back, and we're going to talk all about her channel and what she's got growing on this year. So we're going to do that here in just one moment. We'll be right back. So stay tuned.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants, and author, Saving the World with the Home Garden. Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
everyone, this is Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop, here with another trivia question. Which fruit has the highest antioxidant content? A. Blueberries, B. Cherries, C. Strawberries, or D. Avocados? We'll be back with the answer a little later in the show.
All right. Do you know the answer to Sarah's trivia question? You can drop that into the conversation if you like. She'll be back here in just a little bit after our next segment. Give you the answer to her question there. I think a pretty good question there too. Lots of great superfoods there to choose from. And definitely, again, thank you everybody for being here. I see that Rick also dropped it into the conversation there. I want to make sure I say hello. Joining us from Australia, getting up nice and early to join the conversation. Thank you, Rick, for being here. Great to have you here. And let's see here. It's time. Oh, and I also see Guten Gardening in there with his guest there too. Blueberries. Yeah, right on. Thanks for joining with us there, Paul. And good to see you as well too. Right on, everybody. It's time for Are You Following Me?
Are you following me? Are you following me, dude?
All right. For this week's Are You Following Me? We're bringing back to the show Audrey Crawford from Audrey's Little Farm. Great to have you back on the show with us.
Hello,
Right
thanks for
on.
having me.
Yes, excellent. Like I said last time, it was we had you to talk about your gardening summit, which was really, really great. Really enjoyed that, and so I knew, like I said, we got to have you back to talk all about what you got growing on at Audrey's Little Farm. So take a minute there and reintroduce yourself to everybody there, and tell us a little bit about what you've got growing on.
Yeah, perfect. My name is Audrey Crawford, and I run the site called Audrey's Little Farm. I have a website, a YouTube channel, podcasts, all the social media. Basically, I started the online business portion back in 2018 just because I was finishing up my bachelor's degree in agriculture at the time, and I just thought I could maybe make something work so then I could stay home and work on the farm and our cattle ranch and things like that. And it luckily took off, and now I have a 3-year-old son, so I get to work from home, be home with him, and help take care of all the things here on my little farm and family. And so that's kind of the short answer. But
Right.
anyways, there's all kinds of ways you can learn about gardening, chickens, canning, recipes, things like that. So that's Audrey's Little Farm in a nutshell.
All right. Well, perfect. So yeah, let's dig into all of that great stuff. So so again, where does I mean, you're gonna touch on it just a little bit, but let's dig into where does your garden story begin? What's your history with gardening? Was this something that you got into when you were a little kid? I mean, I'm sure
Yeah,
you
so
grew up on a farm.
Yep. So what's cool, I feel like with my stories, it's one of those things where I have no lots of people are like, oh, in 2020 or in 2015 or whenever it was that they started their garden.
Yeah.
And the cool part with my story is that I don't remember life without a garden. So that part is really cool. So I grew up
Yes.
in a family. I'm the 4th generation of farmers in my family. It probably goes back farther, but from the direct lines that I am 100% aware of, everyone has always farmed. And so now currently where we live, or I live actually on the same family ranch that I grew up on since I was born. And my husband and son and I actually live in the house I grew up in, and my parents are next door, and my family farms walnuts commercially. And then we also run a cattle ranch. But then as far as home gardening, which is to me really where my passion is, like the agriculture, it's like I have a huge passion for ag and farmers, and they make the world go round. But I really am passionate about helping people start their own home garden, because there's just so much more that you can grow in a small amount of space. When you're growing commercially, you have a lot of one big crop. For example, we have the walnuts, and that's all we're harvesting from here on the actual ranch. But then I have my garden area, which is probably about, I would say maybe like an acre of space where I'm growing, maybe a half acre. And I have all kinds of different things. So every, tomatoes, peppers, squash, cucumbers, okra, all the things you can imagine. Then in the cooler months, all your cool weather veggies. But I've just always really enjoyed that part. So I, as a little girl, started off gardening with my great grandpa. He was my great grandparents were my neighbors growing up, which is where my parents now live. And I would go down and help him in his garden every day. And he was at the time taking care of all the fruit and different crops that we had on the family ranch back then, which consisted of, different stone fruit and citrus and grapes and all kinds of different fruit from which now doesn't exist. But I would go out and help him irrigate, and then I'd go back to the house with him, and we'd be out in his little home garden, and he'd, be out there watering tomatoes and picking squash. And so just as a little girl, I've always really loved the gardening part. And then the older I got, I no longer I wanted to still help him, but I wanted my own thing, So I remember going out to the area where my garden actually exists today, and my dad plowed up an area of the field, and we planted my first garden that was truly my own. And I would say I was probably maybe 10 or 11 at that point. And then it just, every year just kept getting better and bigger. And we put in raised beds, and then, redesigned it again. And now we have a really big cattle panel arch that I'm growing things on. So I feel like I've, just forever, my whole life, we've been adding and kind of remodeling and testing things out. And each year keeps getting better, and I keep learning. But it's always been a passion, and it's always been something I've done, which is really cool.
Yeah, definitely something you really connected with when you were younger. I love this story though too. I love, I really like, again too, I attach and connect a lot more again with, you said, I started my gardening journey around 2010. You know what I mean? So, and I was already well into my adulthood before I started growing my own food and doing that sort of thing. But I do love this story of just this generational family that you've got going on, where, everybody's just kind of moving along, and each generation's kind of taking the house next and everything. And I bet you for a couple of generations before you, they could answer that question the same way, right? That they don't live without a garden as well, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah, that's
I'm
just amazing.
very fortunate that, it's been really a lifelong journey, which I think makes learning easier. But you definitely, the more I feel like gardening is the thing I love about it so much is you can never really quit learning, and you can always keep building on your skills. But I don't think you can I don't ever believe that you shouldn't have started gardening because you don't know enough. Because you really, I think, there's basic things that you should know that are going to help you have success. But really just diving in and getting going is really what's going to let you have, better success year after year.
Yeah, and it's also too, another thing too about kind of just diving in is that sometimes it's kind of fun to look back, especially for like folks like myself. For you, you were just constantly learning, growing through life and just getting all this sort of stuff. But when I look back at like some of those very first gardens I grew, and I think about the way I planted things without just some basic knowledge about some stuff, and it's kind of, it brings a little chuckle when you think back to some of your first garden experiences and stuff too. So there's that goes along with it as well.
Yeah. Well,
Enjoy it, have fun.
Yeah. Well, and as you say that too, I think encouraging, piece of advice to any gardener, but especially the beginner gardener, is when I think back to the first garden I have a real memory of that was my own. It was just basically, this plot of ground that we had that was just an open field, and there's nothing planted out there. And so we dished up this corner of it, and I had just long furrows, and we were, farming here well, I say commercially, but like, I guess it is commercially. We have, the big plows, and we would pull furrows and all the things. So I was growing my home garden, like actual, like our commercial crops out on the farm. So I was watering everything with furrows, basically kind of like flood irrigating everything.
Just kind of modeling what you were seeing.
Yeah, just modeling, what was out there. So like we actually, pulled real furrows and berms with the tractor, because we just had all the farm equipment, and everything grew fine. And I would never do it that way now, though, just because it was so much more work doing it that way, because there are so many weeds, basically flood irrigating, no, not totally flood irrigating, but watering in the furrows. And which just created so many more weeds. It's more difficult to really like apply your mulch. It's hard to get to the crops because you're walking like in the furrows. And I just look back, but I'm like, I remember having really great harvest still. So it's like, even though the setup maybe wasn't ideal for the home garden, it still worked. And so really, I think however you get your garden started is totally fine, and it can work. But then you learn, well, that's not very, it could be better. So then I transitioned to some raised beds, and then now I have long rows, but I have walkways in between, and I have drip irrigation set up, and all kinds of things that make life as a gardener easier and more productive. But there's lots of ways to skin a cat.
Yes, yes. And again, too, it's the learning process, which is fun as well, too, from no matter how you get started, when you get down, a few seasons in, you've really got some things down. And like I said, you look back and you go, wow, I really, see where you've come along and everything, too. And that sense of accomplishment that a garden and gardening experience can give you is really great as well, too.
Yes.
What is it? So outside of like all of that, what is it about gardening though, too? I mean, this is something again you connect with when you were really young. So I'm sure there's a lot of like memories and nostalgia that kind of come along with it as well. But what is it you enjoy most about gardening?
For me, I guess like to give like one answer, it's like one of those things where I'm like, man, how do I choose one? I would say
Yeah.
the biggest thing is I just love the idea of like starting something from nothing and watching it grow. So it's
Mhm.
like just the fact that you can have this packet of seeds, put some seeds in the ground, and then that is giving you food for your family. And just like that whole process,
Yeah.
from seed to harvest, to me is just an incredible thing. And so I always try to come back to that idea of like, even if you get bugs or you get some kind of disease or whatever it might be, usually you
Mhm.
still will get some kind of harvest, even from, when you have pests out in the garden or you have a disease,
Yeah.
whatever. But it's just really that I love that process of from nothing to something. But then
Mhm.
just being outside and having that hobby to get you outdoors. Um,
Yes.
I feel like also just the or nurturing for something. So same as
Yeah.
like, me with my son, it's like it's nice to have something to take care of, which also could be a overwhelming thing as well. Sometimes that causes some stress as well.
Exactly.
But it's like that nurturing
Yeah.
relationship, I think, is and it gives you that purpose as well. So that's really, I think,
Yeah.
a big part of it for me.
Yeah.
And then I think it's good to have, some sort of responsibility, I guess, and the garden can bring that. So um but I guess so that kind of just like now I think more as I think into it, it's just like I also think it's nice to have that bit of because I will say, well, let me backtrack a little bit. As get ready to say self sufficiency, I don't want people to
Yeah.
think that I'm nowhere. I feel like my garden is huge, but we're nowhere completely self sufficient. But I think
Yeah.
knowing that you have that skill to grow and that you have the ability to grow food, it just gives you
Mhm.
that sense of freedom and that sense of self sufficiency, even if it's on a very small scale or a big scale, whatever size your garden is. And I've always
Mhm.
loved that. Just knowing that I have the skill to grow food is really
Yeah.
powerful.
It
And
is. It is very. I just remember that realization and that moment in my own experience.
yeah.
Where I was like, "Wow, this is just very empowering."
Hmm.
To know that I can take a packet of seeds and grow something that we could, eat and consume and you know what I mean. That's just life giving in a sense.
Yes.
It really is an empowering accomplishment when you start doing that at
Yeah.
first. Yeah, let's see here. I saw Jay dropped in a question for you as well too. I thought this was a great question. What type of reactions do the previous generations have to any changes you've made since you've
Um,
pretty much kind of grown into the space now? It was theirs at one point in time. I'm sure there were things they were doing, and each generation, right, has probably done unique things for themselves. Have they?
yeah. So I will say, I guess maybe the nice thing, because as people know, the older the generation, the farther it goes back, usually they're very
Mhm,
stuck in their ways and don't like change. And I totally
mhm,
get that and grasp that. The nice part is that um, I garden, I remember my first experience out in the garden was with my great grandpa, who at the time was taking care of the family farm, taking care of all the crops that were out here. Um, but the home garden part was separate from like what was happening commercially. So his little home garden where I was helping him was different from the business. And then um, the great grandparents have now passed away. But then my parents took over the actual farming part, but they never actually, my dad really never had the home garden part. So it kind of, I guess, skipped a generation. There would have been my grandpa, my dad, then me. But so I guess it's nice because I took over the home gardening part, but I really didn't have to change anything. So there was no things that were changing that probably got people out of their comfort zone. It was kind of just it was my hobby as a little kid. I kind of took it on from great grandpa, and the farming part has really stayed. It's mostly my parents. I help with it as well, but all the decisions that have been made, I haven't really changed too much. I feel like my own home garden is my so what I call Audrey
Right.
Farm is just really the home garden and my chickens and the online business and everything.
Yeah.
As far as the walnuts go now, that's
So you
mostly
just
my
kind of
dad's.
cut away your own little space a little bit.
Yep. And so luckily, and then I think everybody's just very, my grandparents, which never lived here on the farm, but it was his parents that were out here with us. He's, very happy seeing, me out in the garden doing the home gardening stuff. And he's actually come on my YouTube channel with me and done some stuff related to like pruning fruit trees and planting fruit trees and things. So
Excellent.
I think he's still like, he likes really that. He has a great understanding of more of the commercial side, but bringing it to the home garden. But as far as growing, your veggies and your herbs and flowers and things like that, it's such a different scale, when you're growing commercially. So I feel like the home garden is just different from that. So I guess that maybe kind of answered the question. I probably strayed off a little bit, but basically it's been nice because nobody has been upset with what I've done. It's been just a great transition to kind of having two separate sides going.
Right. And I again too, I love how you've kind of like carved out something a little unique for yourself, just separate from what the larger operation is. And that's just really kind of cool. That's really excellent. What are some of your favorite things to grow in your garden? First off, where again is your garden at? Let's talk about like climate and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So we are in Exeter, California, which is Central Valley, California, between Bakersfield and Fresno, kind of near the Sequoia National Park, if probably people might be familiar with that.
Okay. All right.
We're zone 9B. And so summers get really hot. But the one nice thing right where we are, which I think helps that we're in the middle of lots of farm ground, is it cools out. I think even though in town, the daytime temperature is basically the same, it takes longer to cool off in town, with all the cement and pavement and things. So being out here in farm ground, it still cools off, even if it's 110 degrees during the day. I would say even through the middle of summer, it cools down to the 70s, low 60s. So we have a really good cool off, which helps a lot of crops grow well all throughout the summer. So I really don't struggle to grow anything, even though we have the really hot temperatures. Fortunate. It cools off enough. So that really helps.
Oh man, that would be nice. I mean, I like warm temperatures and stuff, but some of those days where, it's 100 and something and you got to go through it, you got to bear through a night that only dips down to maybe mid 90s. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to have an evening cool off for sure.
It is. It really makes the biggest difference. I was just reading a comment actually this morning on my podcast YouTube channel. So I have them separated out just so I have the podcast on one channel and then like my tutorial videos on a different channel, but it's both Audrey
that might be smart. I might have should have done that
show. Anyways, I was just reading a comment though this morning of somebody in Arizona who was saying, they're 115 plus degrees during the day, but they still are around in the low hundreds at night, which really is a struggle to grow a lot of things when it just stays that hot constantly.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy
to plants can't get any relief, then they're just similar to like when it gets either really dry or say really cold or any of those sort of things, plants will tend to kind of go into a dormancy or just really slow growth completely. Light, taking light, all these sort of different things that'll cause issues for them. And that sense of unbearable heat where it's just relentless is not very good for plants as well too, because that'll do the same thing to them. It'll just slow their growth, or in some cases with some plants they just won't grow at all,
right? Even
dying off.
But let's see, I was just looking at some comments, but let's see here. The evening cool off makes a difference. Yes,
it really does. Sure. It really does. So again, some of your favorite things to grow in the garden were
so if I had to pick only one summer crop, it would be tomatoes. That's definitely our favorite. And then in the cooler months, lettuce would be my favorite, just because I feel like we use lettuce just all the time. Weekly salads for dinners and lunches, and it's just such an easy thing to grow. And I love you cut it and it comes back again. And so lettuce in the cooler months is number one, and then tomatoes in the summer.
Yeah, lettuce for sure. And I know how much I enjoy that and now, because I really took there were a few heads that were growing that I had, not very many like I usually do. I kind of took almost a winter off type of thing and didn't really grow a lot of stuff, so I didn't have very much greens. And now I know how much I miss them. So they are definitely one of my favorites too. You gotta
Yeah.
love the cool season greens when you got the chance, just when they're just so plentiful. You can grow so many great varieties of them. You can just have some
Yes.
just amazing salads.
Yep.
Let's see.
Um,
Let's see here. Guten Gardening said, "Are there any vegetables that you consider not worth spending your time growing?" That kind of goes along with what my next question was. Usually, when I ask you what your favorite thing to grow is, I'll ask you what your least favorite thing to grow is. So that, I mean, that kind of goes along with it.
yeah. So I think when I try to think of like something that I've grown that, was, I can't think of anything that I would say, oh, like, don't grow that because it did something bad. But I will
Hmm.
say, I think the most important thing, like whatever you're going to grow, is really think about if it's something that you actually like and will eat. Because if it's just taking up space in the garden and you have to constantly care for it and you don't like that crop, then it's definitely not worth growing. And I
Yeah.
went through a phase, really, I think what made me switch things is when I became a mom, because before I had way more time to be out in the garden. And so I was, which I will say, it is always cool to experiment. If there's something you've never
Hmm.
grown and you're not really sure if you like it, because a lot of things are better fresh than they are from the store. So it might be that you think you don't like it, but you actually will by growing it from home. And so I really think testing is obviously a great, and I would encourage everyone to test out growing things if you have the space. But I will say I used to grow so many weird, crazy varieties just for the heck of it. And
Hmm.
then once I became a mom and my time was more limited, then I started realizing quickly that I don't have time to grow these things that I don't really like. I don't know if they're going to grow well here. It's not really worth it at this point in this stage of life to grow things that I know I don't like and that aren't going to perform
Yeah.
well here. So, I stick now, to tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers, and my family loves those summer crops and we love okra. But I am a little bit more, um, I, for example, I used to grow like 8 different varieties of squash, which I probably,
Hmm.
who knows, by the end of the summer, I bet you all have 8 varieties still out there. But what I've noticed with our family is we don't want to eat squash every day. And when you grow 8 varieties of squash, you have so much squash coming on that it's either
Hmm.
going to waste, which the nice thing is you can always give it away to friends and family. I can feed it to the chickens, things like that. But
Yeah.
just I shouldn't say hassle, but the time it takes to go out there and harvest all that squash, and it's not necessarily, we're not utilizing it like we
Hmm.
should. Squash is also one of those things, or at least with summer squashes, there's not that many great ways to preserve it. You can freeze it. I feel like the
Yeah.
texture changes a little bit, but it's one of the veggies that it's not so great to preserve. As far as like with cucumbers, you can make pickles. With tomatoes, you
Yeah.
can make spaghetti sauce and can your tomatoes. And I feel like they still hold their quality really well.
Right.
But so I think
Yeah.
actually, as I talk this out, I'm like, maybe like your eggplant and your squashes, you don't need that many.
Not that
Or,
many.
stick with the
Right.
ones that you're
Exactly.
gonna grow or that you're gonna
Yeah.
eat.
Think of like some of the things that maybe at the end of your gardening season that you didn't have enough of. And then
Yeah,
think of that space that, that maybe some of those extra squash were taking, and you could grow more of those, and that
right.
sort of stuff, and just kind of equal things out in a bit when it comes to doing that sort of thing. That's always something to do as you move through your experience from season to season, because I do a similar thing. And I think it's almost in a way too, is almost like gardening experience or gardening maturity in a sense. We at first we're growing everything, we're experimenting with all this sort of stuff, and then we start getting some successes. We know what we're good at growing at, and then a few seasons down the road, we're starting to realize that sort of same thing that you're talking about,
Yeah,
is that maybe I should be growing more of the things I really enjoy,
yeah,
versus all of this other extra stuff, which is somewhat fun to grow. There's some that I just can't, there's some that I have to grow too. And you mentioned eggplants though too. And there's some that I just have to grow as kind of like ornamentals that I just give away to friends because I don't eat them really at all. I
mhm,
mean, I'll try some stuff that my friends will make from the ones that I give them and everything, just to give them a try, because I'll always give something a try. But eggplants aren't the biggest favorite of mine, but I love them in my garden. They're almost a cool ornamental. The fruits are always really cool. You can get lots of different varieties and colors, like
yeah,
a lot of other things and stuff too. So there are some of those things that you just have to have in your garden, but for the
right.
most part, I think it's really a good idea to to really grow those things that you're going to eat and enjoy, or have some way of preserving in a longer term basis.
Yeah, and as you're, kind of talking that out, I'm thinking through well, the things that, in my opinion, that are always worth growing and that just are less stressful would be like something like your tomatoes and your peppers, for example, because they can stay on the plant longer. A tomato, once it's ripe, you can still keep it on the vine and it doesn't get overly ripe that fast. Like it's going to take a little while before it doesn't really, you can't really let your
Mhm.
tomatoes get too big necessarily. Whereas like a zucchini that's too big or a cucumber that's too big, the seeds get
Yes.
bigger and the quality is less. But with a
Mhm.
tomato, you could leave it on the vine for an extra few days and it's really no problem. Usually it actually just gets a little bit better. And something
Yeah.
like a pepper, same thing. Even some
Mm.
peppers, your colorful
They get
peppers, they all start
sweeter
out
and
green, but then they change color as they mature. And so
mm,
those kind of things I enjoy just because it's not the stress of having to be out there and picking it at that prime time. Where cucumbers,
mhm.
you want to pick them when they're small enough, especially if you're going to be doing like your small pickling cucumbers. They can go from being perfect to way too big in like the matter of a day, it seems like. And
Yeah.
your zucchini can, same thing, be perfect size. And then the next day or, 2 days later, they're way too big. So those kind of things, it's nice to have. I still like having them in the garden, but as far as growing them, they're a little bit more stressful, a little bit more of a hassle just because you've got to really be on top of harvesting. And
Yeah.
and then either have a plan to preserve or use it fresh. A lot of the stuff, can last a week or so in the house, but
Yeah.
um, I like the things that you can kind of go out there and just pick them as you need them, which I feel like that's what you get with tomatoes and peppers.
Mhm.
But a lot of your summer crops can just grow so fast. So it's definitely nice to kind of have a plan of what you're going to do and then have the things that you want to eat frequently. And that makes the garden a lot more enjoyable.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. So, yeah, so again, too, I mean, you've got a nice long history story with gardening, a generational one. It's been a part of your life and all of that. So, what was it ultimately that made you decide to go, okay, well, let me get a camera out in my garden and let me start filming videos, or let's create this, Audrey's little farm. How did that all come about?
Yeah. So this is the one point where I do have that definitive moment where I'm like, this is where the business or, the
Yeah,
idea and Audrey's Little
yeah.
Farm, began. So I went to college at Fresno State and I was getting my bachelor's degree in agriculture. And I didn't know exactly what route I was going to take, but just growing up in ag, I knew I wanted to have a career in ag.
Hmm.
But the closer I was getting to graduating, I didn't yet know exactly which route I was going to go. And I just thought it's like at the time I was helping here on the family's ranch and I help on our family's cattle ranch. And I just really love that side of everything. And I knew the, real, I say real, but like a regular, 9 to 5 weekly job, I was probably not going to be able to really spend that much time out in the garden and continue helping on the ranch and all the things. And then, and then at the time also, I wasn't married yet and I didn't have a son, but I knew eventually when those things happened, I would want to have the flexibility to probably stay home with my kids and so on.
Hmm.
So anyway, I was just reading through an article and I was in between classes and I read this article of this lady who talked about making her income from home with her homestead. And at first, my mind just thought like, oh, farmers market selling eggs, like all the little things that are could be
Hmm.
a great income, but just I didn't really see like how could that work long term, or be enough to sustain. So I read through her article, ended up buying her book. Well, it come to find out, her main income really came from her blog that taught about homesteading, and so I was like, well, that like sounds interesting. I at the time didn't even know what a blog was, which
Right.
it's what's funny is you're on Pinterest and you go to a recipe and all of those are blogs, but I didn't really realize like the connection at the time. And so I just remember coming home telling my parents, I bought this book, I'm going to start a blog, and by the time I graduate next year, so I was a junior at the time, I'm like, I'm going to be making an income from this, and if I'm not, then I'll, get a real job. And
There
so
you
I
go.
spent my last year and a half of college working at creating this blog. And by the time graduation came, I graduated and I was making like a very small income, but it was enough where I was like, you know what? I know it's going to work. And if I can dedicate a whole year, I'm out of school at this point. If I can dedicate a whole year to growing this blog, writing articles, at this time I'm just still learning. Like I didn't have tech skills.
Mhm.
I just kept buying courses and books and all the things. And
Yeah.
now, however many years later, it's turned into a thriving business and I'm just incredibly blessed. But
Yeah.
um, when I look back, it's like that was like the moment where I'm like, I know I'm going to make this work, and I have this skill that I am already helping family and friends with. Everyone would come to me and ask, when do I plant
Hmm.
this, or how do I do this with this? And how do you transplant tomatoes? How do you start them by seed? And it was like something I was so passionate about helping other people with. I'm just going to start writing all these skills into posts. Then I dove into YouTube and started doing videos, which for me, I like it better. Lately I've been a little bit less active on YouTube because I'm trying to get my podcast going. And I just don't have the bandwidth for all the things. Right.
Oh, tell me about it. I
And
know
so
that one very well. I know that very well.
So I mastered the blog first, and that's really what got everything going. And, started growing an email list. And then I started doing the online summits, and that was really a big boost in business. And I have a membership as well, which we do like private, or group coaching, like not really coaching calls, but group Q&A calls and special trainings and things that aren't available outside of the membership. And so there's all kinds of great things that have become of it. But now that I am a mom and I'm married and I get to be home working in the garden, but be able to work from home and take care of our son, it's just an incredible blessing.
Oh, yeah, that is so great. And it's so cool that, you just kind of had this idea and created a dream out of it and went after it. I totally get that whole sense of that purpose when you do something like that. I feel that the same way, especially also all the bandwidth stuff that goes with it. But in the long run, when we're doing stuff that we really love and enjoy, then it's just it's just really the best. And then you get to spend all your time with your family on top of it too. So how much better can it be, right?
I know, and it's just incredible. And I think going into it with the mindset of knowing that this was going to be a business, probably I think really helped things take off quicker than they would have. A lot of people, I think, get into their blog or whatever it might be because it's a hobby, which is great, and then it starts making money, and then people turn it into a business. But I went in with a mindset knowing like I have 1 year to make this work, or I'm probably never going to make it work.
Oh,
and so I just
probably the way you
really
should
hard.
do it.
Yeah,
Probably the way you should do it. I went in it just having fun for years, and then somewhere along the line goes, oh, maybe I should do a business out of this, and without no real business knowledge at all too. So
yeah.
We all go about different ways, and it's great to see, again, the success you've had. I really enjoy what you've got going on with your channel. Like I said, your gardening summit was really fun. So it was really great to have you here to be able to talk about that as well before, and then to be here and talk about Audrey's little farm. So again, that's really awesome of you to be here. Everybody else though, too, like we say, get down below into the description there. We've got links to Audrey's little farm. Make sure you go and subscribe and check out what she's got growing on there. Go find her podcast and check out her podcast as well too. And Audrey, thank you so much for being here today and
Thanks for having me.
coming back again today anyways, right?
Yes. And I'm hoping, so the next summit will be February of 2026, and we'll chat later about it, but I'm hoping if you have the time, maybe you'll be able to be a speaker at the next summit.
Exactly. I love it. It sounds great. We'll definitely have to talk about that and plan that for this next year. And again, thank you so much for being here. It's really awesome to talk to you. We'll definitely find other ways to get you back on the show again in the near future, hopefully to talk some more about all this great gardening, all this gardening stuff we love and have fun and enjoy doing.
Yes. Well, thank you very much and have a great day.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Hey gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits.
answer to this week's trivia question is A. Blueberries are known for their high antioxidant content. This is especially true of wild blueberries, which have a total antioxidant capacity of more than 13,000 per cup. Thanks for watching. Head over to Sarah's Seed Shop where you can find garden seeds at unbeatable prices. Enjoy the rest of the show and have a great day.
All right. Did you get Sarah's trivia question right? It was blueberries. I thought it was, I had that perfectly. But then again, when I saw avocado on there for some reason, I don't know why, I thought maybe, but no, it's definitely blueberries. Blueberries, the ultimate superfood. And definitely go and check out Sarah's Seed Shop at sarahseedshop.com. She's got all of these just amazing essential seeds that you need for your garden. If you're still looking for some seeds for your garden, definitely go to sarahseedshop.com. You won't find a better value for your dollar on seeds anywhere else than Sarah's Seed Shop there too. So definitely go do that. Awesome, everybody. It's about time we get moving on. Today we've got a really great guest. Like I said, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while. So let's see who we got today for our featured guest.
You never know when you might learn something, and that's what this is about for me. These are people that I admire. Please welcome my next guest.
All right. Today's featured guest, and real quick before I bring him on too, I got to show you guys this as well too. I've been following this guy for a while. I remember seeing him on social media the first time and just couldn't believe his garden and where he gardens from. So let me show you this real quick. He just posted these pictures on social media recently. Jason joins us from the tall buildings of Manchester, UK, and check out this garden here. What a killer balcony garden, just way up in the sky. That's why they call him the Cloud Gardener. Let's welcome Jason Williams to the show. Thank you so much for being here, Jason. It's great to have you back on the show with us today. Uh-oh, I think we might be muted. Do you have a... Uh-oh. Oh boy, we're always having fun with technical stuff. You can hear me though, right? I can. Okay, yeah, I'm not hearing you though. Let's see here. Try again. Yeah, uh-oh, I'm not hearing you. Oh wait. There's something going on with the mic. I hear something in the background. What seems like going on.
Yeah. Can you hear?
Oh wait. Oh, there we are. I can hear you now.
Oh.
Perfect.
Okay, we'll try this one. Okay, cool.
Okay, good. Great. Jason, great to have you back. Thanks for joining us today.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I'm really, again, like I've been telling people today, I've been really looking forward to talking to you again because since last time we had you on the show and talked a lot about what you been up to there with the Cloud Gardener and all of that. You've been on this just amazing trip around the world, and I got to catch up with you on part of it. I'll talk about a little bit later, but just really great. I want to really, because we only got so much time and I want to dig into so much of what you had going on while you were going there. So at first, let's just give you a minute here to maybe just reintroduce yourself real quick. Tell us about Cloud Gardener, and then we'll jump right into this fellowship and everything that you got to learn on this amazing trip.
Yeah. So I only started gardening in 2020 during lockdown, and the only thing that we could do in lockdown was either go to a supermarket or go to a garden center. So I used we were allowed 2 trips a day, I think, or 1 trip a day outside the house, and I used that trip to go and pick up some plants for my balcony because I thought, oh, let me try and make something of this space. And most of the plants that I got, they unalived themselves. So I decided that I was going to try and learn why are my plants unliving themselves. So
Right.
I remember looking at gardening media and gardening social media, trying to learn about balconies, and there was nothing about balcony gardens. Everything here in the UK is always based on these people with huge gardens. So
Right.
I started to learn my own space and found that my garden is very, very different. I have a glass railing on my balcony, and that heats everything up. Yes,
Oh,
the
look at
Monstera is here.
mine too.
um,
Mine too.
and the garden, it went from one marigold to me now growing Malabar spinach, climbing spinach. I have roses, chilies, peppers, cucumbers, melons, all sorts of different herbs. I'm looking out my window now, just trying to
Yeah.
remember what it is that I'm growing. I have wisteria, grapevines, kiwis, passion fruits, all sorts of different things. And I've learned along the way that gardening is so beneficial to mental health.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
Essentially, what I found is that because I used to work in hospitality and I was working 50, 60-hour weeks, uh, I had a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and actually having furlough, having some time away, and then starting to garden and then seeing those new shoots come up or starting some seedlings, I found it really, really beneficial to my mental health. And so part of my mission now is to make sure that everybody in these grey cities that we live in over here have access to green space, whether that is a communal park within a development or whether that's access to gardening on a balcony.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And one of the things too recently, because of this fellowship and everything, you kind of had to kind of reset and redo things and everything, right? So, so again, a really fun garden you've got there up on your balcony there. Again, I showed those pictures. Just it's just really amazing that you can grow anything up there. I encourage anybody, if you want to learn more about those balcony gardens, for one, you can go and check out Jason's channel for sure. I've got the link down below in the description. You can go see all about what he's got growing there as well too, or you can check out our previous interview with him. But like I said, I really want to dig into this fellowship that you went on, and there's a lot to talk about here. You went on some really great adventures in some different countries to learn about green spaces. But first, let's kind of talk about the Churchill Fellowship as it is too. What was it that encouraged you to take on going after that fellowship and to do this to begin with?
So I did a show garden last year. So I I've fallen into a career as a garden designer, and
Mm-hmm.
in 2022 I designed a show garden at the Chelsea Flower Show. And it just so happens now that every year I say I'm never going to do one, and then I end up doing another show garden.
Yes.
Uh, last year I did a show garden at the RHS Urban Show, which was the very first indoor show garden, very first indoor flower show in the country.
Oh, wow.
And that was based on how to, my exhibit was based on how to connect people in a city to nature. But what the RHS didn't know was that I had used that exhibit as a platform to demonstrate my understanding of urban greening to the Churchill Fellowship. And the Churchill Fellowship is a organization that hands out research grants, but you have to go through a very long application process. And my thesis that I submitted to the fellowship was how to make our towns and cities greener and the positives and negatives of ecotourism. And I was very lucky. I was selected, and I had the opportunity to travel to Barcelona, Milan, Singapore, China, and Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Like
That's
you
just
do.
amazing. Just amazing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was based on, again, too, the question, how do you make our towns and cities greener? which is a great question. I think cities throughout the world need to be exploring this more, but some cities do it better than others. And what was it that made you pick these specific places to go visit?
So I had to really fight and justify my carbon footprint.
Right. That part of
was
it, yeah,
one of the
definitely.
questions in my interview was, can you justify your carbon footprint? So it was really interesting, actually, because I knew that Singapore and China would probably have some really great examples of urban greening. However, the planting would not work here in the UK. So in order for me to get some real ideas about planting, I would have to visit somewhere within Europe. And so I selected Barcelona, for example, because our temperatures here in the UK are set to match Barcelona's current temperatures by 2050. So it was really important for me to go and understand how they incorporate drought-tolerant planting into the city, so that we could use some of those similar examples here in the UK. And then I was hoping to go and see some really great ideas in Singapore and China. And I don't know if this will work, but I have a couple of pictures that I may be able to show you.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. I think we did this last time. If you got to screen share.
Yep, I'll give it a go.
Let's see if I can't get this up here.
Oh, there we go.
All right. Boom. There we go.
All right, is this gonna... Is that full screen? Let's see. No, don't do that. Okay.
There we go.
So, yeah.
Back on the balcony. Oh, look at how beautiful that is.
This is my glorious balcony. So I did see in the comments that someone has got a really... someone else in the comments has got a little balcony garden as well.
Yeah.
Just as a side note, balcony tour video is coming out as soon as we're finished here. So you'll get to see my balcony in full and what it looks like now.
That's perfect.
But this is my garden about 3 years ago in full bloom. And it's just tremendous. I've got I've got 3 ponds. One of them is a fish pond. Yes. I'm growing passion fruits over the arches. I've got grapes over the arches there. So it's really a really pretty garden.
Amazing.
But one of the questions that my local authority, my local council here in Manchester wanted to know was how cities have used levers within their control in order to improve access to green space. And that is really in terms of developers. So these were some of the gardens that I had done at the Urban Show with some students. So they created 4 or 5 different gardens here. But what I did want to show you was this.
Oh, yes. Is this that Bosco
So this
Verticale?
is in Milan.
Yeah.
That's exactly correct. So this is the Bosco Verticale, and it's such a beautiful building. And it was to go and see how this building stands. It is private. It's a private residence. Yeah. So although each one of the apartments has a balcony, you're looking at spending €2,500 to €3,500 a month for one of these properties, which is a lot.
Yeah, sounds like a lot.
It's a lot. But for me, the really interesting part was not the building itself, was actually this park. So the park is called BAM Park, and this park is run with a joint control between a developer and the local Milanese government. And they even have allotment spaces here so that local residents can come and use the allotment spaces. They have a amphitheater for staging for live music. It's meticulously kept. And so it was a really great example of what we could see more of in our towns and cities. Here in Manchester, things are very, very grey. And developers here, we have something called biodiversity net gain. And essentially what that means is if a developer knocks down a brownfield site, like an old factory, they have to leave 10% of the new development green and better than it was.
Oh,
so
wow. That's
it sounds like a great policy, but if it was a car park, for example, that had been taken over and now developed on to build a tower, well, the green was never really there in the first place, so they don't have to do too much. And also what they could do is say, right, we are not going to do the 10%, we're going to plant 1 million trees somewhere else.
Oh,
and then those residents get no green space whatsoever.
Yikes.
Yes, and so
Well,
spaces
that's
like
kind
this.
of a that's not, when you hear it up front, you don't think that they've got these kind of back doors where they can just kind of pull out of those sort of things. Yeah, it's got to be a little bit more
exactly
stringent, a little bit more firm. You know,
100%, and I think that's part of our issue here. So if I was to go back, so here you see just across the city how many towers there are, and in fact, if you look really closely, right in front of me is a building going up.
Yeah,
now
brand new one.
That building is actually made, and I'm looking at it now, it's 67 floors up.
Oh wow.
And it has got no green space, no balconies, it's all glass. And so we have a real growing issue here where we need housing, and these buildings go up really, really quickly. But my concern is people lose connection to nature. So to go and see things like this, I think was really eye-opening to see that actually some developers will go out of their way to make green spaces and find ways to connect people to it.
Yeah. And even though again, like you're saying though too, where you were in Milan, or was it Milan or Barcelona, I guess?
Yeah,
but you were talking about there were more, but they were more climatically going to align with you in the future. So you were kind of looking kind of ahead in a sense too. So
exactly.
So building these types of buildings would be something that, would work for maybe, I don't know, I guess what you're saying, not necessarily at this moment for the climate, but it would definitely be something that if they started building and getting on top of this now, that by this time they could have spaces all over the city that could really benefit from those climatic changes.
100%. And what I came to learn is that if I was to take somewhere like Singapore, for example, so this is what Singapore looked like 80 years ago. And this was just after colonization had ended. So they kicked out the UK, the British, after World War II. And unfortunately, they were also thrown out of Malaysia. So they tried to join Malaysia, and they were thrown out of Malaysia. And so Singapore had to find a way to make it on its own. And so it created its very own USP, and it decided that it was going to be the city in the garden. And so they have a real focus on urban greening and making their city as green as possible. And so they have a citywide master plan, and these plans are available all across the city. They even have a exhibit in the city centre for urban planning. And everybody in Singapore knows who their urban planning department is and what they do, because they communicate very, very well. They have plans for parks. So they make parks, but they will make connectors. So there will be bike trails, running trails, all the way to the next park. They believe that you should not be more than 15 minutes away from a green space. And so they build and create lots of different green spaces to enable people to connect to nature. They also create lots of new homes with community gardens and urban farms on top. And they even think about things like transport, which was really interesting. So they have a really fantastic transportation system, an MTR, and it's 99% efficient, and it's extremely cheap to use because they don't want people to use cars. So they have a cap on the amount of cars that are allowed on the road. So it's something like 600,000 cars, and they make them as expensive as possible so that you cannot buy one unless you really need to, because the public transport system is that good.
Right.
And they offset the price. So the train company is actually a developer, and what the developer or the train company does is it builds these amazing train stations that have got retail, office retail, and residential apartments all above it. And that becomes the central hub of each district. And they offset the rent from those units against the prices of the train tickets to keep the train tickets as cheap as possible.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's real thinking. These are like second and these are higher level thinking when it comes to urban planning that really just makes so much more sense.
So much sense, but they do everything so systematically. Like the master plan keeps changing. This is what that city looks like after 80 years. I mean, we also, I'm careful and cautious to over glamorize things because obviously no country is perfect.
Right.
There are free and fair elections in Singapore. However, only one party has ever won that election.
Right.
Which allows them to do what they do because they don't have to worry about any red tape because there's no new government that's going to come in 4 or 5 years' time that's going to upend everything. Things just get done. So there's levels of consistency. And so what they say is if there is a low voter turnout, then they use that as a referendum. And if they have not done a good enough job and there's a low turnout, then they go even harder to try and appeal back to the people that they've missed. So they build even more great infrastructure to help people.
Wow.
I mean, yeah.
Talk about being benevolent, right?
Literally, I was very, very shocked to see, things just being built because they needed to be built. And they're not being political games like what happens over here in the UK. So,
yeah. They sure do.
This will just give you a little idea. So this is in the urban department, and so you'll see these brown buildings. They are yet to be built, and so there actually is very little homelessness over in Singapore, and 80% of the population of Singapore lives in social housing.
Oh, wow.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah.
This is the view from on top of Marina Bay. So this is like a brand new, a newish park that they've built. And again, those two biomes are designed for bringing people along, and they are massive, massive exhibits inside, like Kew Gardens here in the UK, greenhouses full of different plants, orchid selections, loads of different things. And then you'll have these super trees, they're called, in the center, which light up. So there are light shows twice a night, and it's designed for tourism to bring people in.
Yeah. See, like the sound must be that waterfall.
Contraption. This is that's actually the airport. So that's the first thing that you see when you go to Singapore, and it's also the last thing that you see. It's an absolutely incredible flex.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing.
So if you can take a whole tour of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is literally they're showing you, look, we care about green space. And
Wow.
I took a trip along the super trees. So this is a rooftop, a canopy top walk through the trees, all living, all real plants up the trees. It's just incredible. Again,
Wow.
this is a hotel, and so you'll find many of the buildings have these kind of green facades in them. And when I part of my research, when I spoke to the developers or spoke to the hotels, then they said it was cheaper for them to put this urban greening all up along the sides. A, because it helps to reduce the temperatures within the buildings, which means that they spend less money on air conditioning.
Right.
This particular hotel uses the urban farm to grow food for the 7 cafes and restaurants within the building. And then it's also a great marketing technique because whenever someone comes to Singapore, they take pictures of this building. So for them, it's a
Wow.
win-win.
Yes.
And it's just these mindsets are so different to what we have in the West.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
I
again,
will
too,
stop
it
sharing
comes
now
to
because I
this.
think I probably would have.
No, that's all right. No, again, too, it's just amazing stuff. And again, too, it's just, you know, it's great to see these places doing these sort of things, setting examples for other places and what they could possibly do. And ultimately, it also, I think, too, really kind of comes back to kind of, what got you really motivated in gardening as well too when you first got started as well. That if you introduce green things to people who aren't necessarily used to seeing them, urban spaces, especially, you're reintroducing nature, you're connecting people with green, that only brings and uplifts the people around, and cities can be gray and drab and hard to deal with, and frustrating and all that sort of stuff. And these sort of green spaces can really tamp down a lot of that as well too. It's a mental health thing as well when you think about it, because people just enjoy green spaces. They enjoy plants, they enjoy trees, they enjoy having nature around them.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because for me, uh, when I was traveling over there, the
Hmm.
frustration on my end comes from the fact that a lot of the developers who create a lot of these buildings over there, they
Yeah.
are also present here in the UK. But
Okay.
because our policies are different to that over there,
Yeah.
they don't have to create these green spaces. And
Hmm.
also nobody goes out and checks whether or not they do implement those green spaces. So what
Right.
happens normally is here in the UK is if a developer puts a proposal together to build a brand new development, their CGI mock-up of the garden will or the communal areas may be very green, but what they actually produce is something completely different, and they don't do
Hmm.
that. And so,
Yeah.
because our local governments are so cash strapped over here, they don't have the manpower to go out and double check whether or not it's done. And so, part of my work here in the UK is I work with local communities to say to with developers, okay, I understand that you don't have a budget to maintain the green spaces, but actually, there's a community group here. There are people within your development actually who would really like to use a garden.
Hmm.
So if you
Yeah.
let us have this area of the development, then I can train and coach your community to use that space, and then you get free labor essentially, but then the community get access to green space. So
Yeah.
it's until policy here gets changed, these are the
Hmm.
ways that I feel that uh, we have to try and work together in order to make those connections back to nature.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really interesting though too when you take a look at that aspect of things that maybe, like say in Singapore, this isn't necessarily a government we would look at, from where we sit and go, "Hey, this is really favorable." But at the same time, when you're looking at what they're able to accomplish, and then you come back home and go, well, this is what we're not able to accomplish because we've got this bureaucracy, we've got this political issues and problems, funding, all these sort of things that come with this sort of, the just all of us basically, I guess you would say in democracy, working together to make something happen or any sort of situation in any sort of municipality or city of a certain size. And it's very interesting to look at, well, here's these places where, again, we wouldn't favor the government, but man, they're beautiful and they're providing
Yeah.
these amazing things.
And so the reason so Singapore specifically, and China is relaxing on this now to be a little bit more Western. But Singapore, the difference is that Singapore owns the land, the government owns the land, and so that's a big key difference. And so if a developer wants a job, they have to essentially bid for that contract,
Mm-hmm.
and have to, in order to win that contract, they have to produce the greenest thing possible because their competitor is going to be doing the same. And so that level of competition between the two is what drives this green urban greening factor to the next level. And interestingly, in Singapore, because the government owns the land, they actually lease quite a lot of it. So they lease them for like 99 years. And of course, it's part of the master plan. So once those 99 years are done, they'll demolish those buildings and then redevelop them again. But on the other side of the island, they might be redeveloping another part of the land, and they will move those residents from that one building to another. These are all things that we could not do in the West, especially in the UK, because if we were told that you were being moved, that is not something we would take. Like it would be
right, exactly. Yeah, rebellion for sure.
100%. And but the way that they see things over there is it's for the greater good. And so the people there, they would be upset, but they wouldn't protest because their mindset is different.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas over here, here's a great example. We have now just got one of our runways, I think it's Heathrow, that they're going to build another runway. But this one runway has been talked about for about 20 years, and they finally now decided that they are going to implement it. But it's because these things become political ping pong between all of the parties.
Yes.
So it can get pretty stressful. But I just, from traveling across all 15 of the cities that I visited, it became clear that no one is perfect. And I think the best thing to do is just to cherry pick the best bits out of all of our governments and all of our systems and find a way to make things work. Because I feel that things are pretty tribal these days. No matter where you are, people just stay in their one ecosystem, in their one echo chamber. And it's like, no. If we all can just come together, we can find a way that everybody profits. Like, for example, the work that I do with the developers, with the authorities, with the communities, bringing everyone together so that we all can benefit from the green space. It shouldn't be difficult, but for some reason it is.
Find a way. We find a way, again too, where we, where again, we love the sense of democracy and the idea of certain things but there's a lot of complications that come along with it, because the point ultimately is that we're supposed to work together to find solutions to all of this sort of stuff. And that's what it really comes down to. And that's exactly what you were doing on this fellowship too, was finding, like you said, finding these great things, pulling them out, what it is, and then again, let's formulate and find a plan to make this happen. There are solutions to everything if we put our minds to it.
100%. I mean, so I'll show you one last thing, if we've got time.
Okay. Yeah.
So let me just.
Well, yeah, I found that I really did just find that really fascinating, though, too. Again, and again, also as well with China. Now, this was something very interesting. I was mentioning this is where I got to catch up with you on this trip. Was I was up just out in the middle of the night, just
Oh
kind
yeah.
of just wasn't sleeping, and I was just like, let me get on the phone, right? You know, so I hit up Instagram real quick to see what's going on, and it says Jason's live like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, what's going on? And so I pop on Instagram to hang out with Jason live while he's going through the public transportation system in China. And it was just
Yes.
fascinating. I found just hanging out with you in this, just checking this stuff out was just one of the most fascinating things. And it almost comes back to, again, similar what we were talking about again too, China being a totally different governmental entity. They handle and do things different. But I was just
My goodness.
amazed. I mean, I've been in some public transportation systems throughout the United States. I've been to New York, DC, I've traveled the BART in the Bay Area, I've been on some of these things. And what I was seeing in this in these trains and these things in China was just, I mean, some of the most cleanest places you've ever seen. It was just completely amazing. So again, there are certain things and advantages and disadvantages to those different things, but I think ultimately there are, as we were just mentioning, ways that we can find solutions to do some of these same similar things, even in our own system. I mean, it shouldn't be that hard for us to figure out how to do some of these stuff.
Yeah, I think China happened to be my favorite stop on the trip, actually.
Yeah.
So I went to 9 different cities in China, and I it made me realize just how small the UK is. China is massive. I knew China was big, but it's massive. Like I remember, flew from one city to another, and it was a 2.5 hour flight. And I was like, wow, like you can't do that in the UK. There's no. Like a flight from one end to the other is less than an hour. So it was
you
very
just go up and come back down, basically.
That's pretty much it. But I had to pretty much unlearn everything that I knew about China and then just experience it for real. And so a lot of things that we're told are real, like social credit scores and stuff like that, is not a thing. It's not a thing at all.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah,
have
you
a
were
cost
talking
of
about a
living
lot of
crisis.
that stuff on that live stream. I thought was, again, too, was fascinating as well.
Yes. Oh yeah. So that social credit score it's not a thing at all. There's no form of a cost of living crisis over there. People don't know what that is. But ultimately, I mean, it's not, obviously it's nowhere near perfect.
Right, exactly.
It is not. I mean, there were times where I was filming and police officers came up behind me to watch what I was filming. They took my camera, looked through my camera, and then in this particular place, actually, they put up a drone. So I was followed everywhere by a drone for quite some time. I guess they must have believed I was some kind of a spy or something.
For sure.
There I was on my hands and knees filming flowers and stuff in the middle of the city. So looking back, I can see why it comes to that conclusion. And it is true that they haven't seen people of color at all. So
yeah, I remember asking you about that too. That was just, I was like, I bet you get a lot of strange looks, right?
Strange looks. People
I mean,
will
I
come up
bet just being an
and
American or being anybody from outside of China would get you some looks just a bit. But
yeah,
being a black man, especially with an accent too, when you start talking to them, I'm sure that really got you some great looks.
It was great. But then at the same time, so in actual fact, the most racist place that I went to was actually Milan.
Oh.
So I went to go and sit on a tram I sat down on the tram and people would get up and walk away from me.
Mm. Wow.
Whereas China, it didn't happen. China was a little bit different. Because they hadn't seen anyone like me before. It was almost like it was inquisitiveness.
Yeah.
And so it was very. At times there was racism, but for most of the part, it's just they hadn't seen someone from a different country before.
More
And so,
fascination than fear.
yeah, because the vast amount of people that I've met, they'd never left the country before.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what do you mean you've not left the country before? But they had no need to leave the country because you can get on a flight, and a flight would be 60 to 70 pounds from the north to the south, where there are tropical beaches.
Yeah.
So why would you pay 3 or 4, well, probably more than that? Why would you pay £500 for a ticket to go to, somewhere like Spain or something like that, when you can spend £70 for a ticket to go down south? You would just stay where you can, where it's cheaper. And obviously, for a lot of the locals, they won't be earning the same amount of the people in the cities. So, but this, for example, this space-looking city.
Let me get this up here for you real quick.
This is Chongqing, this city here.
Wow. Yeah.
And so this is one of the second largest cities in China. I think the population is something ridiculous, like 60 million people.
Yeah.
And so they have to deal with flooding. And so I was stood on top of one of the hills, and as it rains and falls into the river that you see down below. And then the river floods the main city a bit further down.
Mm-hmm.
And so they create these things called sponge parks. So this park has got lots of kind of gravelly material, and it features lots of different holding pens. So as you can see here, there's actually a little bit of water in that part right at the front, but that's actually a pond. And so they use all sorts of different aquatic plants to filter the water, and it goes down from one pond to the next. And by the time it gets to the bottom of the hill, that water will be redirected to a local reservoir for drinking water. And they create these sponge parks in order to stop the flow of the water. So it basically just, instead of all of the water rushing down into the river, it gets held back and maintained. And so that was just one sponge park, but there are actually 250 in Wuhan. And so they decided,
it kind of changes it when you think of the number at that point. Yeah.
Sorry, what was that?
I said that kind of changes it. You look at the one and then you think, oh, well, there's 250 more. So that's just really kind of, So there's a real solid purpose there.
Exactly. And, things like this. So you'll see they'll create parks like this. As it rains, all of these buildings have got flat roofs. The water is designed to, the pipe work is all designed to collect all the rainwater, which then floods these parks. So these parks are designed to flood. They create these rafts in the ponds, rafts in the rivers for wildlife. And interestingly enough, if I was to tell you that this city here that you're looking at is Wuhan.
Oh, okay. That's Wuhan.
But our perception of Wuhan is probably very different to what we actually see here. But it's really fascinating. And so there are lots of elements there that we can draw on and could possibly do here in the UK.
Yeah.
And that was my goal, is to go and find out how they're doing this and see how we can implement some of these ideas into the urban setting.
Yeah, exactly. That's and really, and again, it's important whether or not we're looking at, one place versus another. And again, too, I've seen some people in the comments talking about the politics of things. Urban green spaces, there's a lot of politics that go along with that stuff, and we have to be able to work within those wherever things are, whether it's the UK, the US, Italy, China, anywhere else. There are things that we can take that people do. I mean, there's just things in China they do better when it comes to green spaces, and we should learn some things from that and how we can implement them in our own systems, and that sort of stuff,
100%.
so that we can have, again, green spaces are important. I think that because here's another thing. Cities are only getting bigger. I mean, growth is not going to stop. So there's, as long as we're looking at more growth. I mean, you were just showing a picture right across the way of a building that's brand new. That's going to be you said 60 some floors already, that's just, and there's going to be more of those buildings and more of this urban development that's going to go on worldwide. And we should be learning things from each other to find out how we can do that best, because it does, again, come down to that point that I think is really the more important things, is that a connection with nature is just important for us as human beings.
Yeah,
And the more
it's
grayer
really,
our
really,
spaces get, we need to find ways to get to put green in there.
yeah. So essentially, the way that I see things is, when I got back from the trip,
Yeah.
it was supposed to be 4.5. Oh, sorry, it's supposed to be 8 weeks, and I ended up traveling for just short of 5 months because so much of what I found was really fascinating. But when I got back, I had some blues because there was such a massive gap between what other places are doing and what we're not doing.
Yeah.
I had to try and find a strategy, and so part of my strategy now is what I call soft activism, because I feel that when it comes to green spaces and sustainability and climate, what some people have the tendency to do is talk so much that it just shuts people down. And
Yeah.
so a lot of the work that I do with community gardens and reaching out and working with developers, there are some people who would refuse to work with a developer because of their own moral reasonings. But I'm
Hmm.
like, well, that's not how we're going to make change. We need to reach across the
Yeah.
aisle and
Yeah.
work together on it. So it's about doing things like that. It's about using my platform as a TV presenter. Um,
Yeah.
so when I'm currently on Alan Titchmarsh's Gardening
Yeah. I
Club,
was going to
which is
mention that
a
too as
show.
well. Great. That's really great.
I'm his urban community gardening champion. So I go out and showcase some really great gardens on the TV show that are in urban settings. And so my train of thought is, if we can keep urban greening into people's mindset, because right now people can't afford to put gas in their car, they can't afford to eat right now. We're really struggling over here. And so
Yeah.
to force my own views that urban greening is everybody's number one policy and number one thing that they can care about right now is so wrong.
Hmm.
So, but at the same time, if I can just keep the conversation going, then when
Yeah.
it is time to elect the right person for your area, these are going to be some questions that people are going to be asking themselves. Is
Yeah.
this person really going to help us move green legislation in the right direction, or are they not? And so
Mhm.
I think that's the way to do it, and that's the way to get the policy change, by making sure that the politicians also know that people care about green space. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, it
working
might
with
not
the
be top priority, but it's not
exactly,
unimportant.
yes, exactly that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, again, too, it's just in a UK, even here into the US, I know there's a lot of organizations, a lot of places, even throughout, the US here, that work to do things in green spaces, and know that, again, too, it may not be top priority, but it's also really important, again, we're just growing and growing. Cities are only getting bigger. They're only, expanding out more and taking away more nature versus, putting it back in place. And so we need to do as much of that as possible. And I think it's really important. That's why I think, really I found this idea of you going around and checking out these other places that do some of this stuff and why and how they do it was really important to do, because we need to know that sort of information, if we're going to move forward and improve the sort of spaces that we live in.
Right about now, there is a real appetite for it from the general public, and all it takes really is for a couple of great developers to do it, and then everyone will fall in line. And cynic me says, even if they reach out to work with me, and I know full well that it is a case of greenwashing, I will continue to work with them, because I think that actually, even if they are just looking to get some great marketing points by working with me, the end result will still be a great green space. So it's important to just go ahead and do it. But there is some movement in certain places, and there's now a higher uptick in people wanting to do more. Because it gets them great publicity. And when you start to show them the statistics, because I think that's the other thing that I learned as well, that us as green people, everybody in the chat room, everyone watching, we all have a real passion for green spaces and greenery. But the problem is that you cannot quantify mental health. You cannot quantify the social impact of that green space. And so if you put yourself in that person's boots, and it's your job to deliver profit for your company, having a green space actually means that you need to hire someone to maintain that. So that's coming out of your profits. And so if your budgets are not designed to incorporate that element, you're going to be running at a loss. So the question is, how do you then quantify this in a way that makes a developer happy?
And that's the ultimate equation in the whole math problem there, right? Is just
Pretty
that
much.
you've got to make the math work in especially a system where again, whether we like it or not, it's a full-on capitalist world out there, and folks are out to make money. And if you can't find ways to make money in green spaces in some way. And again, that's very interesting though too, is the idea that, what your biggest benefit is something that you can't really, put a monetary number to, this idea that everybody's getting this mental health benefit, from having green spaces around. It just uplifts people, and again, too, I'm sure there's got to, I'm sure there's got to be some good research too. There's a space up in Seattle, a place called the Spheres, and this was something that the company Amazon built for its employees. And they're basically these big giant bubble. It's like 3 big giant bubbles that are kind of put together in a way, but make this big, large greenhouse basically in the middle of the city. You'll have to look it up. I did a video on it last year when I went to go visit, but Amazon, a company, you know what I mean? These guys are out, they're one of the most biggest profitable companies in the world, knew enough to build a space like this for its own employees, because they knew that if we built the space that was just full of green plants and green life and greenery, trees inside of this thing, waterfalls, and created this just natural space for their employees, they would be more productive. They would come up with better ideas for them. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. That was the whole basis of the idea. That place wasn't even really open to the public for the first several years. It was there. It was more public demand. We want to get in there and see what's going on, that they let people in. It was a profit-driven idea, was to create this basic giant greenhouse in the middle of the city of Seattle.
100%. But going back to Singapore and China, for example,
they're doing that for the general public.
They're doing that for the general public, but also they're not.
They're not. Well,
Well, they are, but we have to be clear that,
again, I guess it comes to
over in China, for
tourism. There is
example,
money driven into it. Yeah.
there's tourism, but then also, they don't have the same workers' rights as we do. And so, if you have a population that are largely farmers or that are working in factories for little pay, and they can't just go off and retire at a certain age like we can over here and continue to get paid or whatever, but then you need to keep your population as healthy as possible. And so
Yeah.
these spaces are important, not just for well-being but also for health. So in a lot of the parks and outdoor spaces, they have outdoor gyms, running tracks, all sorts of different things, but the goal is to keep people as alive as possible to work. So it sounds really bleak, and it's not a perfect picture, but at the same time, the results are there for everybody to have. So they've created those spaces. Who
Yeah.
cares what the reasons for? The spaces are there.
Yep.
But
Yeah,
it's been a really fascinating trip.
Yeah. Let's see, DLRA put this comment here. There are tens of thousands of acres of green spaces in the USA called national parks, state parks. I suggest it's the urban setting causing mental health problems. And yeah, that's exactly the problem. It's exactly the point, is that, the more cities are growing, the more and more people are concentrated into one area, the further and further away some of those national parks and state parks get from them, and more isolated they get from that sort of stuff. It is the urban setting ultimately that we need to be focused on for what is really the most of our population. So the most of the populations are centered in these urban areas, and it's important, again, whether it's other health concerns or mental health or all of that sort of stuff, again, too, to make sure that as we're building and growing these cities, we're also incorporating nature along the way as well, too.
100%. So if you look at somewhere like Manchester, where I live, and the UK as a whole, but dialing down straight into Manchester, if you look at a map of Manchester, Manchester is 51% green and 49% grey.
Yeah.
The areas that are grey are in the central nucleus. The green on the outside of the city is our peatlands and our wetlands, where we have loads of endangered species of plants and animals. So if we were to get people out of the city, we would have to then rebuild on those peatlands and the wetlands, which of course nobody wants. And the richest of us will live on that precipice between the wetlands and the grey. So the people who are rich, who live near the green spaces, they don't want any more urbanization there, because that will bring their house prices down. But ultimately, the goal really is to protect those wetlands. So really, we do have to regenerate our towns and cities. Some of these old factories that are dotted around the city, or car parks, they are prime spots to redevelop. So I'm not oblivious to that. I agree with it, but it's just the way that it's done. It's the way that the green spaces are forgotten about. And so I think that is the challenge, is making sure that these spaces are available and accessible to all.
Yeah, really, really important. Yeah, again, too, such a great mission, a great, basically expedition to go on. Again, I'm sure that trip was just amazing for you to be able to have all of those experiences and see all that sort of stuff. Really enjoyed some of the videos you've done. Are there more that you got coming out on this trip that you did?
So I have a series on YouTube where it's a bit longer. They're almost like vlogs of my time throughout the cities. And then I think from next week, I return to posting on Instagram and TikTok shorter form content. That's the goal anyway. And then, so I have a whole series on that. And then I've really started to try to lock back into YouTube. YouTube is
Yeah,
is a beast.
it is. Yes,
It's
for
a real
sure.
beast. And I don't use YouTube properly. So
Right.
if if I was a really great YouTube creator, I would just stay in my one niche, and the algorithm would know and understand everything that I do. But
Right.
sometimes I do a nursery visit. Sometimes I go and visit, I don't know, a castle.
Yeah. Yeah.
I basically have just made myself it's called the Cloud Gardener, the channel. So
Right.
I'm like, well,
Right.
it's not just about balcony gardening, it's about
Yeah.
me as a cloud gardener. So I just do whatever. Um,
Yes.
but
It's
this
kind of
this year,
similar how my channel almost works in a way too. It's just a lot of self-interest where, my
yeah,
interests are green, they are plants, they are gardening, they are all these sort of things. So I kind of just do a bunch of all of that sort of stuff. So it's really a variety channel in a way, or a green variety channel, if you want to call it that.
essentially. But it's fun because some people join me just for the balcony gardening content, but some people follow me for my work at flower shows where I go
Yeah.
and interview all of the designers. And so, and then along the way, they might find that they're interested in something else, and it just spirals for them. So they come along with me on the journey. And quite recently, actually, the channel's grown quite a lot. So
Yeah.
it seems to be going on a good path this year, which is nice.
That's really great. That's really great. And again, too, I just really great person. I've really enjoyed all of the content and everything you've done with your channel since I first discovered you back in 2020, and have been following along ever since. And so it couldn't have happened to a better person. Really was excited for you for that trip, and really great to have you back on the show to talk all about this sort of stuff. Again, really important stuff when it comes down to really urban spaces, green spaces. There's so much to talk about. Again, to even, I mean, this show could be 5 hours, and I don't even know if we would have really been able to dig into everything specifically. That's when it comes down to it. But more and more to come from your channel too. If anybody wants to go and check that out as well too, I put a link down below in the description so that you can follow along and catch up with some more videos and content from that trip, as well as flower shows, castles, all sorts of stuff. Cloud gardening up in this amazing balcony garden that you got. And I believe you did mention too, just a little bit earlier too, that you are going to release a garden tour of the balcony garden just after this show, right?
Yes, so I think it's coming out at round about at my time. It's 9 p.m. So in about 10 minutes or so.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
we'll get to see a full in-depth look at this balcony.
Well, that'll be perfect then, because then we'll be finishing up here in just a few minutes. So everybody, if you want to check out this amazing balcony garden that Jason has, he's got a full tour video about to be released on his channel. Link right down below in the description there for you to go check that out. And Jason, it's just so great to have you on the show. We'll have to have you back on again too, and maybe do another discussion about this sort of stuff again. Like I said, I still got a dozen questions I probably didn't get to yet. So, but great to have you here with us again today.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. And again, go and check out Jason's channel right down below, and check out his new video coming out in just a few minutes. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
All right. There we are again. Another great show today really, really awesome discussions with our guest today, Audrey from Audrey's Little Farm earlier today for our Are You Following Me? And Jason from the Cloud Gardener UK, talking all about urban green spaces. Like I said, so much to talk about. There's just a lot that goes into these sort of subjects and these sort of things that we could just discuss stuff just really for a long time and really probably not really dig completely into the whole subject when it comes down to it. But for me, you know, I'm a city guy. I've grown up in a lot of different cities and been, you know, visited a lot of cities. I love these urban cities. I love a lot of these places, but I also love nature. I love, love plants and all this sort of stuff, and think it's really important that, you know, especially in these spaces, as we continue to grow and grow, you know, and cities continue to take up more and more space, we need to be thinking about how we implement plants, trees, you know, just greenery in general. And even if it is, you know, building buildings like you saw there with Bosco Verticale in Milan. That's just an amazing building there. Those sort of things. I mean, just more and more of that stuff would just be really amazing. And it's, you know, and it's going to be because of folks like Jason, though, who are going out and getting and finding ways to get out and learn about this sort of stuff and bringing these things back to, cities and you know, transferring this information to different places and getting places more aware of how these things can be implemented, is important. And it's going to be, you know, because of that sort of stuff that those sort of things, you know, can happen in the future as we continue to grow. But right on, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. Real quick, I didn't get a chance to do this, so we're going to do a real quick rundown. If you didn't get a chance to check out last week's show, we had a really great discussion with Mike McGrath from You Bet Your Garden. He's got a great radio show. It's always great to talk to the radio guys on the show too. So that was a great conversation. We also got to meet Edge of Nowhere Farm on last Saturday's show. And on our Sunday edition of the show, remember, we're here every Saturday and Sunday. The Sunday edition of the show last week, we had a garden party with us. The Texas Garden Guy, Gardening with Des, and Phil's Figs all came together to talk the Garden Party podcast and all the things that they've got growing on there, and just overall great gardening conversation with them. And again, like I said, we're back here again tomorrow. Will be Sunday. It's the second Sunday of the month, and I've been talking about this last couple of weeks. We're flipping our second and third Sundays. The second Sunday is usually our Q&A with Gardener Scott, but we're going to do that on the third Sunday. So tomorrow is the second Sunday. We're going to do our monthly gardening book club. We've got our monthly gardening book club tomorrow with our good friend Mark Boucher Colbert joining with us live on the show, and our good friend Scott Wilson from Gardener Scott. Yes, again, he's going to be joining us anyways. Instead of his Q&A, we've got him for our gardening book club in the second week, and then come the third week of the month, we will have him back, which will be the Sunday after next. We'll have him back for our Q&A with Gardener Scott. We got him for 2 weeks in a row, 2 Sundays in a row, Gardener Scott. And then again, that's going to also make up for the fact that he won't be here next month. So we're going to be skipping his Q&A next month. So we'll have him for 2 weeks in a row. But definitely come back and join with us tomorrow on the show. Again, here every Saturday and Sunday to 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern. And again, if you're all here, as before we take off, click that like button, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell notification if you can to be notified of all of our upcoming videos and live streams. And definitely be sure to share with all of your friends out there and let them know about all the great conversations we've got here on the Let's Get Growing show, on the Urban Gardener channel here on YouTube. And definitely follow all of the links down below in the description to all of our guests. Definitely go and check out those links to our guests. I love it when you guys do this too. Go over there, find one of their more recent videos, one of their more recent posts, and let them know, leave a comment and let them know that you saw them here on the Let's Get Growing show. So definitely, I love it when you guys do that. Thank you so much for supporting the show by supporting our guests who take all of their time to join with us and hang out and talk about all of these just wonderful things like our guests today on the show. So again, thank you everybody for being here today. It's so great to have all of you here. I look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow for the Sunday edition of the show. Again, we've got a great show ahead for you with Gardner Scott talking all about his book, A Guide to Raised Bed Gardening. That's been our featured book for this month. So we'll dig into that book with Gardner Scott tomorrow. I look forward to that. I look forward to seeing all of you. I'll see all of you then.